may seem surprising, but the 70-mile-an-hour limit was only introduced permanently 23 years ago, following a 3-year experimental period. Today, motorway cruising at well above that legal maximum seems to be accepted by motorists, and even tacitly approved of by some police forces, depending, of course, on the prevailing conditions. In the United States, there's some evidence that a lower motorway speed limit results in fewer accidents. Over the last 3 years, most states have raised their maximum limit from 55 to 65. The death rate on these roads is now up by a third, to 2,800 killed per year. So couldn't a simple gadget be fitted to all vehicles to limit their speed to, say, 10% above their legal maximum? Now, whilst it may be fiercely contested if applied to cars, coach operators have had to fit such devices to their new vehicles since last April. And for older coaches, speed limiters will be phased in over the next year. These laws followed a series of accidents involving coaches on high-speed roads. 13 people were killed in this horrific crash on the M6 5 years ago. The French have had to fit limiters to bigger trucks for 10 years now, and current discussions mean that lorry anti-speed devices could soon become a requirement throughout the European community. In the UK, limiters are now fitted voluntarily to about 1 in 10 heavy goods vehicles. Increasingly, fleets, like the Post Office, Sainsbury's and Esso, have introduced devices to fix a desired maximum speed.
Setting the speed hold at 60 miles an hour. This means that at no time can I now exceed 60. It gives me full concentration to the road and everything around me. The vehicle is also fitted with a top speed limiter of 70 miles an hour. So the vehicle cannot exceed that speed. As we approach 60 miles an hour, the feeling is just as the accelerator is being magnetically pulled away from your foot.
I can already hear you saying, it's all right for those menacing lorries, but not for cars. But why not? The equipment manufacturers say they could be fitted fairly easily, and it wouldn't be a complicated job.
These are the two major components for fitment to a truck. An actuator, which is controlled by an electronic module. If we were to transfer this technology to a car, then depending on the fueling system fitted would depend on whether you would use both these units, or if it was a fuel injection system, you would only use the actuator and modify the electronics in the vehicle so as to remove the need for this. That obviously has a substantial effect in costings. A combined system, you're looking at around £150 fitted to the vehicle, whilst if it's a modification of the software, then the only unit you're fitting is this, bringing the price down to substantially less than £100.
The motoring organisations are reluctant to give limiters an unqualified acceptance. Even at around £100 a vehicle, they feel the total cost would be better spent on other car safety measures.
Our first reaction would be to look at the cost-benefit ratio. On the one hand, you'd have the cost, which over a period of years would be something like between £1,000 million and £2,000 million to motorists. And you'd have to look at that and say, now, could that money be better spent to save lives in better ways? There's no logical argument against some form of limitation, but you've got to have the ability to accelerate out of trouble. And I think being realistic, you've got to have the ability to travel at between 80 and 85 on roads when the conditions permit.
Whether anti-speeding devices are set at or above the legal maximum, what about the problem of mechanical failure? Well, the manufacturers claim that warranty returns are less than 1 in 1,000. On lorries, a sealed unit helps prevent tampering. And if introduced onto cars, checking the system could become part of the MOT test. The Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders, who speak for the car makers, have no firm view on the subject, but manufacturers of performance cars are worried.
I can't help feeling that there must be better ways of detecting the very small minority of people who are going to break the law, rather than putting a blanket mechanism on all cars. Most independent-minded people would regard it as a considerable infringement of their own liberty to have a device like this thrust upon them when it's an area where most mature people can use responsible judgment.
The introduction of speed limiters on cars is technically feasible, and they could be a relatively cheap and very effective method of controlling the speed of cars of the future. The police would need special enforcement powers, and maybe the MOT test would have to include checks on the equipment. These devices would certainly be fiercely debated, and obviously there would have to be extensive testing before they were made compulsory. But it is surprising that, so far as we're aware, no pressure group, political party or individual politician has ever campaigned for their introduction.